Event listeners. What are they? Who are they? And why are they? Event listeners are pretty well named. They listen to events that occur in the browser. Events are things like clicking, hovering, and scrolling. Now with JavaScript, you can listen or wait, in other words, for these events to trigger and then do something once said event happens. Simple, right?
Of Iraq.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
Wrong.
proved over and over again.
Wrong.
Actually, no, it's extremely simple. Let's look at the following example.
Shia cuisine.
Here in our JS Fiddle, we are going to click this button and then the background color of this div is going to change to red or whatever color you want. Here is the HTML and CSS code if you want to follow along. Now first off, for all you very beginners, here we're going to declare two constant variables with the const keyword so that we're able to call our elements. We're going to access them with the query selector method, which allows you to call classes and IDs as long as you use the correct prefix, which is period for classes and a hashtag for IDs. Now that that's done, let's do a syntax breakdown in order to see how to add an event listener. First, you choose an element you want to listen to. Then you say .add event listener. Then you open some brackets or parentheses if you're fancy. Then in quotes you put the event you want to listen to followed by a comma, and then finally a function to execute some sort of code for what you want to do in response to that event. Got it? Let's apply it to our situation. Really simply, let's establish what we want to happen before we build the event listener, just to make sure we have our logic down. So again, we want to click the button, then have the div change background color. Therefore, the button is the element we want to add our event listener to, and the event we want to listen to is a click. If you didn't get that already, then I don't know what to tell you. You have to put the events in quotes, by the way, just to make sure you understand that. Next, we can actually do something with this by adding a function, which will be nameless. And we'll declare it inside of our event listener method. It can look a little messed up and congested because it's the brackets for the function parameters and the curly brackets where you put your code, then it's the last bracket that closes the event listener. But that's the syntax, so make sure yours looks like this as a start. Let's first console log something like clicked in quotes, just to see if it's working. So console log a string and then see what happens. See there in the console, now every time you click the button, the function gets called. Now this is unlike a normal function that only gets called once when the browser is loaded. Now to get to our purpose. To change the div styling on click, we write my div dot style dot background equals red in quotes, or whatever color you want to put there. Don't forget to refresh or run the code, and there you go. We have done what we came here to do. It's changing colors when we click. Be proud of yourself. The great Mark Zuckerberg is somewhere delighted.
But it is going to bother you because you're human, and I was human. I am human, but I was just referring to myself in the past. Not that I was not human.
You can do exactly the same for hovering by putting mouse over in the quotes. Don't ask me why they couldn't have just made it hover like it is for everywhere else, but anyways. Let's just change the element we're listening to the div now, because visually it'll just make more sense to hover over the div itself, then have its background change. You can leave it on the button if you want, but that just means you'll have to hover over the button to change the div. So you're welcome to choose, but I'm going to switch it to my div. And it works just the same, but with hovering now. There's also mouse leave, which is interesting because it triggers not when you hover over it, but when you exit the desired area, which I, to this day, have never used, but you can go for it if you want. There's an option for you. There are other events like scroll, as we mentioned before, and another one called mouse move that triggers every time you move your mouse, and they all work the same. Just put the name in between the quotes and you're good. Now, another thing about event listeners is that nameless function over there. While that is perfectly okay to do and it'll work, it's just encouraged that you rather write a normal function outside of the event listener and then reference the name of that function in there afterwards, like so. Let's name the function change or whatever you want. Then all you need to do is grab that same line of code from within the event listener and put it inside our new function. Now, as we said already, all that's left is to put the name of the function back where the previous nameless function was. It can be a little tricky once again with all the brackets there, but make sure there's only one closing normal bracket left at the end there for the event listener, and delete all the others. Speaking of brackets, this is important, so pay attention. Notice how I'm just putting the name of the function there. No brackets like you'd normally see when calling a function. Well, that's intentional, of course. The reason is that if you leave the bracket there, then that is going to call the function, and that's bad because it's not gonna wait for the event to be the trigger anymore. Watch what happens. As soon as you reload the page, then look, the color has already changed. And let me tell you, I still make this mistake to this day from time to time. And when you do, you're gonna want to break your PC once you realize why you're struggling. Trust me, I know. But anyways, keep the brackets away and look, works just the same as before, but the code looks more tidy. Now finally, the last thing we're gonna look at is remove event listener. You can imagine what this does, I'm sure. First, let's create a function called remove event or remove event listener. I don't know, you name the function if you can come up with a better name. All you need to do is copy the exact line of whatever your previous event listener was with the same element attached, same event, in this case a mouse over, and the same named function. Note that this will only work with event listeners that have named functions, not like the other ones we had before that were unnamed. Now that it's in there, all that is left is to put remove event listener instead of add event listener. Finally, call the function outside in order to execute it. And look, we're hovering and it is now no longer working because we're removing the event listener altogether. Just comment that line out where we call the function and then it'll work again. Okay, now so let's put this all together. We're gonna create a second button called remove change with a different class to the first one. Let's just call it btn-2. Assign a constant variable btn2 to it, just like our other elements. And now this is what we're gonna do. We will be adding an event listener to our second button, btn2. It's going to be listening for a click. When it is clicked on, we will run our remove event listener function and thus remove the changing color functionality from our first button. We're gonna make a small change to the other code as well, because we'll be making our first button the element we're adding an event listener to, like before, and the event will be a click once again. So now when we click the first button, as usual, it changes the color. But if we first click the remove change button, then that event listener will be removed and there'll be no change in color. Oh wait, no, this isn't right. Wait, why isn't it working? No, please, wait, give me a second. Wait. Okay, no, everything is spelled right, and let me just try again. Wait, what? No, wait. Aha, okay. Aha. You see, I figured out the problem. You see, there at the top, we changed the event we're listening to, and earlier it was my div, which is why it's my div in our remove event listener function, and I didn't change it, so it would match our event listener at the top, which was intentional, of course. I figured I would lay this trap as a teachable moment for you guys and what not to do in the future. So for those of you who were paying attention and fixed it before I revealed the trick, good on you, congratulations, you passed the test. But now that we've changed it so that it can match the right event listener and all that, it'll work perfectly. So let's restart from the top.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
So we first click on our change button, which works as normal. Good. Now refresh or run the page, and before clicking the change button, let's click remove change and remove the event listener from the change button, which will stop it from changing the color. And it works. We've now successfully learned how to add and remove event listeners. Isn't that cool? A perfect tutorial from start to finish, where I never made a single mistake because I never make mistakes, nor have I ever. Like the video for more perfect tutorials, and subscribe to enroll in Ketonics University, the only and most prestigious learning institution in all of coding.